All new at 6, a WBTV investigation is checking the math on the bond agreement that was at the center of the failed project to build the Carolina Panthers headquarters in Rock Hill. A new legal complaint from the city of Rock Hill accuses David Tepper's real estate company of fraud. But it also raises questions about why the city was willing to sign a deal in the first place. Investigative reporter David Hodges has been digging into this long before the lawsuit was ever filed and found there are serious concerns about a lack of oversight and risk to taxpayers, making us ask whether this project was doomed to fail from the start. And David has spent months going through contracts and talking with people who know how these details work. So David, where does the math start to break down?
Really from the very beginning, and that's what this new complaint from Rock Hill shows. Here are the three numbers you need to know up front. The city of Rock Hill was going to issue $225 million in bonds to help pay for this project. In exchange, Tepper's GT Real Estate was going to spend $500 million developing the project and bring 150 jobs to the area. But the numbers for the Rock Hill project were wildly out of line with the math on other similar deals.
The city would not, could not, should not backstop this debt.
That's Rock Hill City Manager David Vihan on March 14th. He's explaining why the city would no longer pursue bonds for the Panthers project. WBTV has previously highlighted this part of the contract between Rock Hill and the real estate company run by Panthers owner David Tepper. It says the city was supposed to issue $225 million in bonds by May 2021. Rarely mentioned from the contract's fine print is what kinds of bonds were supposed to be issued. The deal was supposed to be done with a type of bond called a Municipal Improvement District bond, or MID bond. But experts say this one was very different.
I've never seen something like that.
Economist Austin Drucker studies how sports projects are paid for across the country. He says the unusual part of using a MID bond to pay for the Rock Hill project is that bonds issued by governments, in this case Rock Hill, are normally guaranteed by that government. But that's against state law with revenue bonds like MIDs in South Carolina. Instead, they'd be guaranteed by Tepper's company, GT Real Estate, that filed bankruptcy June 1st.
And so basically, I guess they were backed by the full faith and credit of the failed organization.
Except the complaint filed by Rock Hill shows again and again GT Real Estate refused to back the bonds, ultimately only agreeing to back $7.5 million worth of $225 million of bonds. The math on these projects typically works because of the size of the investment being made by the company that's then getting the bonds. In this case, the $225 million in bonds would be paid back by fees Rock Hill would collect from Tepper, both through the Panthers headquarters and entertainment district envisioned on that property, but those would not have been built for years. Let's compare that to two other projects where the financing plan was very similar. You'll see the math just does not add up. Charleston County wooed Boeing to South Carolina in part because of bonds. That deal was $1 billion in private investment, 2,000 promised jobs, and $120 million in bonds. Charleston County also convinced Mercedes to move a plant there. Mercedes promised $495 million in investment, more than 1,300 jobs, but was going to receive just $38 million in bonds. Compare that to the amount in Rock Hill, where the amount of private investment was about the same as Mercedes, but the total jobs promised was way less. The bonds promised was way more. What's similar about these projects is that the bonds were largely financed by something called a fee in lieu of taxes, or FILOT, more commonly seen in a different kind of bond called a special source revenue bond. But the Panthers project was a MID bond. There are several differences, but one of them is important to oversight and taxpayers. Almost all local bonds have to go through South Carolina State Fiscal Accountability Authority for approval to make sure they're fiscally responsible. MID bonds don't have to go to the authority. An experienced bond attorney told WBTV on Background he has never seen a MID bond with a fee in lieu of taxes structure. And the complaint says Tepper's GT Real Estate communicated a preference for MID bonds just 2 months before the deal was signed.
I think too many elected officials fell victim to this extravaganza.
South Carolina State Senator Dick Harpootlian has questioned this project from the start. Were you surprised at all?
No. Look, again, what I've found is that if it looks too good to be true, it is too good to be true.
Even in the city of Rock Hill's own complaint, they outline months of difficulty working with Tepper's company, not receiving vital information important to getting the bonds approved. Even after 8 months of friction, they signed an agreement anyway.
It was just amazing to me once you said NFL or once you said football, blinders went on. And that happened at a local level, it happened at a state level.
The city has not taken public statements or given public statements about this.
Last Wednesday, Rock Hill Mayor John Geddes declined to give more details to our news partner CN2. WBTV reached out to the city of Rock Hill and a spokesperson responded, quote, "The city council is looking forward eagerly to the day judgment is rendered on the facts that will be presented in court." A spokesperson for Tepper's GT Real Estate did not provide a comment.
I'm no economics expert, but none of it made sense to me from day one. And I'm not a told you so kind of guy, but I told you so.
There are so many more details in this complaint that feel familiar if you have been following our reporting on the Panthers and David Tepper's public-private partnerships. And I'll be talking with you later, Jamie, on Your Side Tonight to break that down even more. Back to you guys.